I smelled like smoke, fish, and coffee. And he still found me. The streets of Seoul at night were merciless. Neon bled into the puddles at my feet, turning the asphalt into a canvas of flickering blues and reds. Market stalls clattered as vendors packed up for the evening, the air thick with frying oil, wet cardboard, and cheap perfume. Perfect. If anyone could disappear in this chaos of scents, it should have been me. I tugged the small vial from my jacket pocket and spilled its contents onto the ground. The liquid hissed faintly as it mixed with the moisture on the pavement, blooming into the sharp tang of burning tires. Another pocket, another vial. This one burst into the aroma of grilled mackerel and garlic. I layered them like paint strokes, weaving lies into the night air. Dogs would have gone crazy here. Hell, even seasoned hunters should have lost their way. Even a bloodhound wouldn't crack this mess, I muttered to myself, chest swelling with smugness. For a moment, I let myself believe I'd won. I slowed my steps, slid into the stream of people leaving the night market, let the ocean of scents carry me. For a second, I was just another face, another body, invisible. And then, silence. It wasn't the absence of sound, the city roared around me. But my instincts screamed. The kind of silence that lives under your skin, hollowing out your lungs, making your heart beat a drum you can't ignore. I ducked into an alley, sharp and narrow, between a noodle shop and a shuttered karaoke bar. The ground was slick, the stench of rotting trash fighting with the sweetness of spilled soju. I layered more vials, pepper spray, musk, fried chicken, and pressed my back against the wall, grinning to myself. "Try and catch me now," I whispered. And that's when he appeared, not with the frantic crash of an amateur tracker, but with the inevitability of gravity. He stepped into the alley like the night itself had been waiting for him. A tall figure, coat half unbuttoned, the edges of his hair damp with rain. His eyes caught the neon, and turned it into steel. ROI. I didn't need an introduction. Every cell in my body knew him. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, watching me, like he had all the time in the world. And that was worse than if he'd lunged. Because it meant he was sure. "Persistent bastard," I hissed under my breath, pushing off the wall. I plastered on a grin. "You sure you're chasing me and not an idea?" Plenty of ghosts wandering around Seoul tonight. Finally he moved. His footsteps didn't echo. They landed too quietly, as if the alley itself wanted to hide him. If it were an idea, his voice was deep, even, almost calm. I'd have given up already. He stopped close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jaw. My grin faltered, just slightly. His gaze wasn't hostile. Worse, it was steady, patient, like he'd been waiting for me to notice something. "This isn't about ghosts," he continued. "This is you." My chest tightened. My heart hammered against my ribs, too loud, too exposed. How the hell? I had drowned myself in falsehoods. Every breath I exhaled was another mask, another wall. And yet standing there in front of him, I felt naked. I hated it. "You're insane," I spat, shifting sideways, angling toward the alley's exit. "No one smells through this." "True," he admitted. And then, with the faintest tilt of his lips, he said, "But I'm not following the smell." The air thinned around me. I swallowed, throat raw. "Then what the hell are you following?" He took one last step forward, close enough that I caught his scent. Not overpowering, not aggressive. Clean. Grounding. The kind of scent that shouldn't belong to a hunter. "You," he said simply. "I follow your name." And in that second, my carefully built fortress cracked. Because deep down, I knew. He was telling the truth. The alley narrowed behind me like the throat of a beast. Damp concrete walls glistening with thin veins of water. Neon lights bled overhead. Pink, green and violet smudges that painted everything sickly and alive. My boots splashed in shallow puddles. The sound far too loud in the suffocating quiet. He didn't rush me. That was the worst part. His presence was steady, deliberate. A man who didn't need to chase because he already knew where the finish line was. I forced my grin back on, sharp enough to cut myself on. "So tell me, Hunter." I let my voice echo in the damp air, theatrical, mocking. "You sure you're chasing me, and not some illusion your head cooked up? Seoul is full of ghosts. Maybe you're just obsessed with one of them." His answer was maddening in its simplicity. "If it were an illusion," Roe said, voice calm, the kind of calm that shredded nerves far better than anger, "I would have given up already." He stepped closer, and for a fleeting second, the neon carved his face into something brutal and beautiful. High cheekbones, that scar tracing his jaw, and eyes like frosted steel. Cold. But not empty. Watching me. Always watching. "This is you," he finished. The words hit me harder than any grab could have. Not fear, at least, not the kind I expected. It was something stranger, rawer. Being seen. Exposed. Like he could read through every mask, every borrowed scent, every clever escape I'd woven. My throat tightened. "You talk like you know me." "I do," he said without hesitation. That should have been laughable. I'd built my entire life on not being known. On slipping between cracks, painting myself in scents that weren't mine, reinventing my trail every step of the way. Yet here he was, looking at me as if he'd peeled all of that away with one glance. The silence pressed in around us. My pulse drummed, fast and uneven. My palms itched with the need to grab another vial, to break it, to drown the air in lies. But something inside me whispered it wouldn't matter. I hated that whisper. I jerked my chin up, forcing steel into my voice. "You're delusional." His lips curved just slightly, not quite a smile. "Maybe. But delusion doesn't feel this real, and damn it, I felt it too. That pull, that terrifying gravity between us. A tether I hadn't agreed to, but one I couldn't deny tugging at my chest. My body wanted to mistake it for danger. My mind knew better, it was worse than danger. It was truth, I couldn't let him have that. My legs moved before the thought finished. I shoved off the wall, darted sideways, the soles of my boots sliding on wet concrete. His arm shifted, too slow, or maybe deliberately so, and my shoulder brushed past him, the contact sending a jolt down my spine. I ran. The alley stretched, twisted, became a blur of neon and shadow. My lungs burned with the stink of fish guts and gasoline, with my own ragged breath. Behind me I heard nothing. No pounding footsteps, no pursuit. He didn't need to follow with noise. He would follow anyway. I didn't stop until the city swallowed me again, until the crush of voices and the steam of food stalls masked the echo of his words in my head. "This is you?" I doubled over near the edge of the street, bracing my palms against my knees, sweat slicking my skin despite the chill. Why had it sounded so true? That was the part I couldn't shake. I was supposed to laugh at hunters, at their pathetic reliance on instincts I could twist like smoke. I was supposed to feel untouchable. And yet in one breath, in one quiet certainty, he'd rattled everything I'd built. I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. Anger helped. Anger felt safer. "Persistent bastard," I muttered to myself. But even as I straightened and melted back into the current of strangers, one truth gnawed at me, undeniable. I was panicking. And worse, part of me wasn't panicking at all. Part of me wanted to believe him. The moment I pushed open the door, the air changed. Her apartment was more laboratory than home. Every flat surface was claimed by glass vials, tiny burners, and scribbled notebooks, stacked like precarious towers. The lights buzzed, half dead, casting the cramped room in a jittering glow. But it was the smell that hit hardest, 100 layers fighting for dominance. Sweet jasmine, cracked pepper, iron and rust, citrus peel left too long in the sun. It was chaos, and somehow it all belonged to her. She didn't look up when I stepped inside. She never did. Bent over a beaker, her thin fingers adjusted the flame with meticulous care. Strands of dark, tangled hair fell into her face. She didn't push them back. I set a crinkled envelope on the only clear spot on the counter. "Money. And the ingredients you wanted." I dropped a cloth bag beside it with a dull thud. Took me half the city to find dried angelica root, by the way. No reply. Just a quiet nod, eyes fixed on the liquid swirling inside her beaker. That was normal. Conversation with her was like tossing stones into a lake. You never knew if the ripples would come back. Finally she said, flat and soft, "You smell tired." I gave a bitter laugh and shrugged off my jacket. "Comes with being chased for sport." Her lips twitched. Her version of humor. Then she pulled the envelope toward her, slipped the bills out, counted without looking. Exact, precise, always. "You mix, well." She tapped the notebook with the end of her pen. "Fast hands. Good lies. High praise from you." I leaned against the wall, careful not to knock over a pyramid of spice jars. The jasmine stung my nose, too sweet, cloying. But good lies only last so long. She tilted her head, eyes still on the page. "You don't like long." Something in me bristled. I hated how she cut through me with so few words. I distracted myself by untying the cloth bag, pulling out small packets of resin, crushed seeds, a vial of resinous oil. She snatched them from my hands before I could set them down, already rearranging her workspace like a puzzle only she could see. I watched in silence as she worked, layering powders, pouring drops, coaxing scents from glass like they were alive. She never faltered, never wasted emotion. For her, smells weren't distractions, they were language. One I could understand but never fully speak. She finally stopped, holding up a new vial. Inside swirled something sharp, metallic, threaded with green citrus. Beta, she said simply. I took it, rolling it between my fingers. Convincing? She met my gaze for half a second, long enough for me to notice the clarity in her dark eyes. Then she looked away. Very. But not you. I froze. That's the point. To not be me. Her voice was almost a whisper, but every word landed like a hammer. You can be anyone. Except yourself. I felt the sting before I registered it. My jaw tightened, fingers clenching around the vial. You think you know me? The words came sharper than I intended. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence filled with the jasmine-perfumed air, pressing down on me heavier than Roy's stare in that alley. I wanted to scoff, to laugh it off as one of her cryptic remarks, but the truth burrowed deep, too familiar. Because she was right. I'd mastered the art of becoming everything, except the one thing I was born as. I could mimic, deceive, twist reality around me, until even hunters got lost. But the one scent I could never find, the one identity I could never wear, was mine. I slipped the vial into my pocket, throat dry. Keep working on formulas, I muttered, forcing steadiness into my voice. I'll need more soon. She nodded once, already back to her notebook, her world of beakers and scents. To her, the conversation was over. To me it was anything but. As I left, the door shutting softly behind me, her words chased me down the hall, sticking to my skin stronger than any artificial scent I'd ever worn. You can be anyone. Except yourself. Memory is a cruel architect. It rebuilds rooms I never want to walk through again, yet they rise around me when I close my eyes. The twins' apartment comes back first. Glass walls, sharp lines, minimalist furniture. That looked more like display pieces than anything meant to be lived in. Clean, sterile, suffocating. A cage polished until it gleamed. At first, I told myself it wasn't a cage. At first, it felt like protection. They had taken me in when I had nowhere else to go. Two alphas in their 30s. Mirror images, yet opposites in every way. One was gentle. He smiled often, his voice low, soothing, as if he thought I might shatter if handled too roughly. His touch lingered like warmth in winter. He'd tell me, "You're safe here, you don't need to keep running." The other was sharp. His words were commands, not suggestions. His stare cut straight through me. Possessive. Demanding. He hated when I slipped away for hours, when I mixed sense without telling him why. You belong here. Don't make me remind you. At first, their contradictions balanced each other. I let myself believe I'd found a strange sort of home between them. Half kindness, half control. But balance never lasts. It didn't take long before their attention turned into chains. They argued in front of me, sharp words snapping like glass. "Stop smothering him," the gentle one would hiss. "Stop pretending he needs freedom," the harsh one would fire back. They weren't really fighting about me. They were fighting for me. I became the prize in their private war. Every choice I made, every smile I gave, tilted the scale. I was never neutral, never invisible. I was the battlefield. The memory tightens my chest even now. Nights blurred into days of surveillance. The gentle one still tried, soft words, sweet reassurances, but even his comfort curdled when I realized it was another way of keeping me there. A softer chain is still a chain. The dark one didn't bother pretending. He called me his. His voice left no room for refusal. I told myself I could endure it, that it was safer than running, that maybe I deserved it. But the longer I stayed, the less I recognized myself. Their scents filled every corner of that apartment, thick, invasive, clinging to my skin. No matter how many vials I smashed, how many false trails I painted, I couldn't scrub them away. Until the night I left. The rain was relentless, hammering the glass walls like it wanted to break me out itself. They were asleep, or pretending to be. I moved quietly, gathering nothing but the vials I needed. I spilled false scents across the floor, down the hall, through the stairwell. Musk, cedar, smoke. A labyrinth of lies they'd never unravel. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would wake them. Every creak of the floorboards felt like betrayal. But I kept going. Out the door, into the storm. Freedom tasted like wet asphalt and cold air. Still, one image followed me into the rain. As I closed the door I glanced back, and one of them was watching. The gentle one. His eyes half open, not surprised, not angry. Just knowing. He didn't stop me. That stare burned worse than any chain. Like he'd always expected me to run, and letting me go was part of the game. I ran anyway, and I never went back. Even now, the guilt clings like smoke. Guilt for leaving. Guilt for staying too long. Guilt for breathing easier the moment the door shut behind me. But underneath the guilt, sharper than anything else, is resolve. Whatever ROI thought he saw in me, whatever he claimed to follow, I'd never let myself fall back into cages, no matter how warm or polished they appeared. Not ever again. The bar smelled of rust and regret. Even under the bitter tang of beer and the low hum of fried oil from the kitchen, the place carried the scent of worn leather and metal. Old weapons and older hunters. It was the kind of haunt where laughter sounded forced, and silence weighed heavier than any jukebox tune. I didn't belong there. Not really. But he did. ROI. I had followed him once, curious, reckless, wanting to know why he never gave up the chase. Tonight, I lingered outside, slipping through shadows, scent wrapped in layers of false citrus and ash. Close enough to watch, close enough to hear. He sat across from a man who looked carved out of grief itself, late 30s, maybe older. Deep lines ran along his face, furrows pressed into his brow as if pain had settled there and refused to leave. His eyes were the worst. Empty, like they'd burned out long ago. They didn't need introductions. Men like that spoke a shared language, scars and silence. The friend's voice was low, gravel ground against stone. You think you're different from the rest of us? Roy didn't answer. He nursed his drink slowly, gaze steady. The man leaned closer, words bitter. I lost her because I thought scent was enough. Thought the bond was a leash that could hold her. But obsession isn't love, Roy. It's a noose. The clink of glass against wood was sharp in the quiet. I held my breath, straining to catch every word. You hear me? The man's tone broke, roughened by something more than alcohol. I thought she'd never leave, that what I felt would keep her here. Instead, it killed everything between us. Roy's face didn't change. His jaw was set, his eyes unreadable. But his silence was louder than any denial. The man gave a humorless laugh, dry as sand. Don't make my mistake. You chase him like a dog chasing its own tail. Round and round, never catching anything, just bleeding yourself dry. That earned the smallest reaction. Roy's lips twitching, a muscle in his cheek shifting. Not quite a smile. More like acknowledgement. You don't know what you're talking about, Roy said finally. His voice was calm, softer than I'd ever heard it, but underneath was iron. The man shook his head. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Silence settled between them again, thick as smoke. From my spot near the doorway, heart hammering, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. He wasn't just hunting me. He was already caught. Caught in something he couldn't explain, something that bound him tighter than any leash. And I hated how a part of me wanted that to be true. The friend finished his drink and stood, shoulders sagging under invisible weight. He clapped ROI on the shoulder. Heavy, resigned. Obsession will eat you alive. Remember that. Then he left, his scent trailing sorrow behind him. Roy didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, fingers tracing the rim of his glass, eyes lost in thought. I slipped back into the night before he could catch me watching. But the words lingered, chasing me just as relentlessly as Roy himself. A dog chasing its own tail. And for the first time I wondered which one of us was really running in circles. The Seoul metro was chaos incarnate. Bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. The air hot and sour with sweat, fried food grease clinging to coats, and a haze of too strong perfume. It was the perfect cover. Ugly, loud, overwhelming. Exactly what I needed. I touched the vial in my pocket, then cracked it open with a practiced flick. A sharp, metallic citrus scent spilled out, weaving into my skin like borrowed armor. Within seconds, the air around me shifted. To anyone with a nose worth its salt, I reeked of beta. Neutral. Unremarkable. Invisible. I smiled to myself, leaning casually against the subway pole as the train lurched forward. No hunter could track me here. Not through this stench. Not through the perfect mask I'd crafted. For once, I let my shoulders drop, breathing in the false safety of anonymity. Got you, I whispered under my breath. Not to him, never to him, but to the paranoia that had been clawing at me since the alley. Tonight, I'd finally won. The doors screeched open at the next station, letting in another wave of passengers, pushing me deeper into the car. I adjusted, elbow to elbow with strangers. A kid gnawed on spicy tteokbokki, the smell cutting sharp through the air. An old man snored in his seat, his coat heavy with stale tobacco. I was drowning in smells, all of them mine to hide behind. Until I looked up. Across the crowded car, sitting with one arm draped casually along the bench, was ROI. Not moving, not rushing, just watching me. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. My first thought was impossible, irrational. He couldn't be here. I'd lost him. I'd buried myself under layers of nothing. And yet, there he was. Steel gray eyes fixed on me, steady as gravity. My chest tightened. Heat crawled up the back of my neck. No, I whispered, shaking my head. The train rattled on, neon lights flickering past the windows. He didn't look away. Finally, the words tore out of me, louder than I meant. How? A few passengers glanced at me, annoyed, then turned away. The city was good at ignoring madness. Roy didn't flinch. His voice carried across the noise of the train, low but clear, as if it was meant only for me. I don't follow the scent. I feel your name. The words landed like a knife. Not in my body but deeper, in the hollow I'd built out of lies. I laughed, sharp and panicked, clutching the subway pole like it was the only solid thing left. You're insane, completely insane. No answer. Just that steady, unshakable stare. My pulse hammered in my ears. The car was too hot, too small, too full of his presence. I needed air, space, distance. The next stop couldn't come fast enough. The doors hissed open, and I shoved past bodies, ignoring curses, stumbling onto the platform. My boots skidded on the tile, nearly slipping in a puddle of spilled soda. I didn't stop. I ran. Behind me I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't need to. He would follow. He always followed. By the time I reached the escalator, lungs burning, my carefully laid certainty had cracked. I'd believed my talent made me untouchable, that no one could pierce through the illusions I wove. But he had. Effortlessly. And worse than fear, worse than anger, was the faint, treacherous truth whispering through me. He wasn't wrong. Her apartment smelled different at night. Sharper. Without the background hum of traffic and chatter bleeding through the windows, the scents she'd built seemed louder, almost alive. Pepper stung the back of my throat. Iron curled metallic on my tongue, and something, floral, jasmine, or lavender, drifted underneath like a false promise of softness. She sat at her workbench, shoulders curved over her notebook, a single desk lamp turning her profile into a paper silhouette. Shadows clung to her face, her hair tangled into knots she didn't seem to notice. I leaned against the wall, every muscle wired too tight, a vial still clenched in my fist. The chase in the subway hadn't left me. Roy's voice was still there, lodged like a splinter in my ribs. Finally, the words tore out of me, raw. I can do everything, I said, my voice shaking despite the effort to keep it steady. I can mimic, I can trick, I can weave lies out of thin air. But there's one thing I can't. She didn't move, didn't even look up. Only her pen paused, mid-scratch. I don't know who I am. My hand opened, and the vial rolled across her desk, knocking against a jar with a hollow clink. My scent. I swallowed hard. It's nothing. Empty, a void. I'm a void. The silence stretched, thick with pepper and smoke. My chest heaved with the admission, anger and shame boiling under my skin. I wanted her to laugh, to dismiss it, to hand me another formula like she always did. Something simple. Something solvable. Instead she finally spoke, her voice quiet, almost fragile. Empty, she said. She repeated it once, tasting the word like it was another ingredient to measure. Then she shook her head. Not nothing. Empty is still something. Empty is waiting. I stared at her, heat flaring in my chest. Waiting for what? For him? For Roy? Is that what you mean? My tone came out sharper than I intended. Her gaze flicked to me, brief, steady, and then back to her notebook. Maybe. Maybe for you. I let out a harsh laugh, scrubbing a hand through my hair. That's poetic, but useless. I can't live on maybe. Hunters don't stop because I'm having an identity crisis. She didn't answer. She rarely did. The scratch of her pen resumed, steady as ever, but her words still lingered in the air, thicker than any scent. Empty is still something. My anger sparked, a hot, ugly fire. I wanted to smash every vial in her workshop, drown in false sense until even I couldn't hear myself think. Because what she said made sense, and that terrified me. I clenched my fists, glaring at the floor, at the mess of shadows stretching long and thin. The anger built, and then broke. What replaced it wasn't relief, wasn't clarity, just quiet. A hollow stillness inside me, where for once the noise of lies and disguises didn't drown everything out. I sank into the chair across from her, the wood creaking under my weight. My voice came out low, rough. And what if you're wrong? What if empty really means nothing? She didn't look at me this time, just whispered, "Then nothing is honest." The words carved into me, slow and deep. For the first time I wondered, truly wondered, if Roy's madness wasn't madness at all. If maybe what he felt when he said he followed my name wasn't obsession but recognition. The thought terrified me more than any hunt. The night air hit me like a slap, cold, restless, alive with the pulse of the city. Neon bled across the skyline, pinks and blues flickering against glass towers. Below, the hum of traffic sounded distant, muffled by the height. I sprinted across the rooftop, lungs burning, boots scraping concrete slick with dew. But before I could reach the edge, he was there. Roy stepped out of the shadows, calm as ever, like the night had bent itself to put him in my way. His coat fluttered in the wind, his outline sharp against the glowing horizon. He didn't look out of breath. He never did. "Stay away." My voice cracked, raw from the run, from the fear clawing at my throat. I pivoted, trying to dodge. But his arm shot out, strong and precise, catching me by the wrist. The grip wasn't crushing, but it was unyielding. I twisted, pulling, thrashing like an animal caught in a trap. "Let me go," I shouted, the words tearing out of me. "I'm not yours." The wind carried my cry across the empty rooftop, scattering it like broken glass. His expression didn't change. Eyes steady, voice maddeningly calm. "I don't want to catch you." I froze mid-struggle, chest heaving. The words didn't make sense. Not after all the nights of pursuit, all the moments I'd felt his shadow at my back. "Then what the hell do you want?" I spat. He didn't hesitate. "I want you to stop hiding." The words landed like a punch, knocking the breath from me more than his grip ever could. My knees almost buckled. "You don't get it," I snapped, though my voice shook. "Hiding is the only thing I know." Something flickered in his gaze then. Soft, almost human, though I refused to name it. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his free hand and set it against my shoulder. The touch was firm, grounding. Not a claim but an anchor. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The city noise faded, the neon blurred. Even the wind stilled for a heartbeat. All that remained was a new scent, faint, fragile but undeniably real. Mine. It rose from somewhere deep, deeper than muscle or blood, threading into the night air. Not borrowed, not crafted, not forged in glass and fire. It was raw, unpolished, trembling like the first cry of a newborn thing. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My chest seized, my throat closed, eyes stinging with sudden tears. "No." The word came out as a whisper, strangled and desperate. "No, that's not." But it was. Every wall I'd built cracked. Every mask I'd worn dissolved. I was left with the one truth I'd never been able to touch. Myself. The shock raked through me, leaving my body shaking. I pressed my free hand against my face, trying to hold myself together. But the tears came anyway, hot against the cold night air. Roy didn't move, didn't let go. His hand remained steady on my shoulder, as if he knew pulling away would break me. "This," he said softly, not triumphant, not gloating, just steady. "This is you." I shook my head, choking on a bitter laugh that dissolved into a sob. "I don't want it. I don't want to be this." "Why?" His voice was calm, but not cruel. "Because if I'm real," I gasped, chest heaving, "then there's no place left to run." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was terrifying in its gentleness. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. Because in my bones, I already knew he was right. The rooftop blurred through my tears, neon smeared into colorless light. My legs trembled, and for the first time in years I felt small, not because I was weak but because I was unmasked. He squeezed my shoulder once, firm, grounding. Not possession, not command. Just presence. And for the first time the void inside me wasn't empty. The rooftop felt like it was tilting under me. Though I knew it was just my body giving up the fight, I stumbled back a step, then sank down hard onto the cold concrete, lungs heaving. The city stretched below in fractured colors, neon bleeding into traffic, headlights carving rivers of white and red. I pressed a hand against my chest as if I could hold in the storm crashing inside me. My breath came ragged, uneven, but not from running. Not anymore. For years I thought I was fleeing hunters, thought I was outsmarting their noses, outpacing their instincts, but that had only been the surface. What I'd really been running from had nothing to do with them. It was me. The empty space I carried. The absence I never wanted to name. The hollow where my scent should have been. I'd painted over it 1,000 times with smoke, citrus, musk, sugar, borrowed skins, borrowed lives, lies in liquid form. I thought if I layered them high enough, no one would notice the void underneath. But Roy had. He hadn't just noticed, he'd waited. And now, with his hand on my shoulder and the faint tremor of something undeniably mine in the air, I couldn't deny it any longer. The void wasn't void at all. It was a lock. And tonight, it had cracked open. I closed my eyes and let the unfamiliar scent wrap around me. It wasn't strong, not yet. It wavered like a candle's flame, fragile and new. But it was mine. The thought stole the strength from my arms, leaving me trembling, not with fear but with the strangest relief. A sound slipped out of me, first a broken hiccup, then something that caught in my throat. Laughter. Real laughter, not the brittle, mocking kind I used to keep people at bay. This was raw, startling, absurd. I doubled over, covering my face with both hands, shoulders shaking with it. Tears streaked down my cheeks, but they didn't taste bitter this time. Roy crouched beside me, his coat brushing the ground. His expression didn't change much, steady as always, but his eyes softened. Just enough. "You like it?" he asked quietly. I tilted my head back, still laughing, the sound jagged and breathless. "Like it? It's awful." My grin wavered between hysteria and release. Now I've got no excuses left, no lies to hide behind. I can't even pretend anymore. His lips curved, almost a smile. "Good," I snorted, wiping at my face with the sleeve of my jacket. The laughter tapered off into a shaky exhale, leaving me lighter than I remembered being in years. "You're impossible. You know that?" "Maybe." His gaze didn't waver. "But so are you." For the first time the words didn't sting. They felt true. I leaned back on my hands, staring up at the sky. Clouds drifted slowly across the sliver of moon, neon painting them in strange colors. My chest rose and fell with steady breaths, the panic gone, replaced with something quieter. Not peace, not yet, but possibility. I had spent so long telling myself I was nothing. Tonight, for the first time, I wasn't. And it was terrifying. And freeing. The city's hum pressed against the edges of the rooftop, the world still spinning below us. But here, in this moment, it felt like the noise had finally made room for me. For my scent. For my name. I glanced sideways at ROI, still crouched near me, still steady as stone. And though I would never admit it aloud, a part of me was grateful that he hadn't let me keep running. I let out one last shaky laugh and muttered, "Awful, really awful." But the smile on my lips stayed. Morning found us still on the rooftop. The city had softened overnight, its sharp neon edges dulled by the mist that clung to glass towers and blurred the horizon. The hum of traffic was distant, muffled, like Seoul itself hadn't fully woken yet. The air smelled different, cleaner, fresher, threaded with the faint bitterness of coffee rising from the paper cup in my hands. I pulled my knees up to my chest, cradling the warmth, letting the steam curl against my face. For once I wasn't trying to hide behind a borrowed scent. No disguises. Just me. Rye sat a few feet away. Legs stretched out, his back against the low ledge. His coat was folded beside him, and for the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look like a predator waiting to pounce. He looked human. Still infuriatingly steady, but human. The silence wasn't heavy. It was the kind of quiet you only notice when you realize you don't need to fill it. Finally, I broke it. "So," I said, sipping my coffee, "does this mean you're my dog now? My mutt with a name?" His head tilted, the ghost of a smile tugging at his mouth. If I'm a dog, then you're the runner who finally got caught. I barked a laugh, nearly spilling my drink. Caught, please. I let you catch up. Big difference. Of course, he said smoothly, without a trace of doubt in his tone. That calm certainty was infuriating. But somehow it made me laugh again. The tension that had bound us for so long seemed thinner now, less like a chain and more like something shared. Not hunter and prey. Not predator and quarry. Just two men, breathing the same air, no longer pretending otherwise. I set the cup down and stretched out beside him, lying flat on the cold rooftop. The mist rolled above, parting just enough for a pale slice of sunlight to break through. I closed my eyes and let it touch my face. For once, I didn't care how I looked, didn't care what anyone else might sense. You know, I said, softer this time, this feels strange. What does? Being still. My chest rose with a steady breath. Being me. He didn't answer right away. Then his voice came, low and even. Maybe that's the point. You were never supposed to be anyone else. I turned my head, squinting at him. His eyes weren't cold now. They were steady, yes, but there was warmth beneath, hidden but undeniable. It unsettled me in ways I wasn't ready to admit. I smirked instead. Don't get poetic on me, Roy. It doesn't suit you. He raised an eyebrow. Neither does running suit you. And yet you've made it your profession. I rolled my eyes but couldn't stop the grin spreading across my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't wearing it as armor. It just fit. We fell back into silence. But this time it felt different. Comfortable. Equal. I took another sip of coffee, savoring the bitter warmth, and let my gaze wander over the waking city. My city. For the first time, it didn't feel like something I needed to escape. I thought I was running from a hunter, I murmured, half to myself, half to him. Roy didn't move, didn't push. He just waited. I exhaled, a shaky laugh tumbling out with the breath. But I was only running from myself, and damn. I tilted my face back to the sky, smiling into the sunlight. It feels good to finally stop.